Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Joining me tonight as guest curator is Big Rick of Rock Talk Studio. Rick, welcome to the program, my friend.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here. One of my favorite podcasts, and I finally get to be on it, so very cool.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad to have you on it. But as a first-time guest, I'd like to start by asking you, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
My brother, right off the bat, it means my brother. I lived in Los Angeles for many years, and I moved from Connecticut. And my brother stayed in Connecticut, and I moved to LA, and I was working in the music industry, and I was blessed to get a lot of promos and a lot of new music, and I was always mixing up tapes and sending it back to him in Connecticut, all kinds of crazy, wild stuff, just the craziest things, and he loved those mixtapes. So that's the first thing I think of when I think of a mixtape is my brother, how much he enjoyed all the music that I sent him.
That's awesome. Well, tonight's topic is an interesting one, as it's number one hits of the 1970s. So just like episode 48, which was number one hits of the 80s with Patreon mixtaper Ben Checkness of the Too Vague podcast, and episode 58, number one hits of the 90s with Jamie DeTringo of the Seas, there's no deep cuts tonight. As with both of those episodes, the deepest of cuts you and I could pull are number one hits that were only number one hits for 1 week, but even then, they were still a number one hit.
Absolutely.
So trivia time.
Okay.
Something everyone can use if it ever pops up on Jeopardy. Rick, do you care to wager a guess as to how many songs reached number one throughout the 1970s?
I'm going 102.
Well, the answer is 253,
wow,
which is much more than both the 80s and 90s decades.
Wow.
Where as you went into the 80s and 90s, songs started staying number one for longer and longer stretches of time.
Right.
So tonight, you and I are tasked with whittling down 253 songs to 20. How did you go about choosing what songs you're bringing to the table tonight?
Rock and roll, baby. It's all rock and roll. It's where I start. That's what my show is about. You know, I review rock and roll books and documentaries, and I stick to like the 60s through 90s, that, you know, the classic era, that golden era of rock and roll. So I'm hunting rock and roll right off the bat. That's what I'm looking for first.
All right. Well, you're speaking my musical language there. I also have a couple of songs in my bank that might be off the beaten path of rock a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't know which one of us is going to get to Disco Duck first. Let's just see if we get there or not.
I'll tell you what, the 70s are an interesting time because of that. You know, there was a lot of the novelty stuff. There's a lot of fluff. There was, you know, rock and roll. There is some, but it's not prominent. It's not like, wow, I was kind of surprised by where's all the rock and roll here. It took me a while to dig through it and find it.
Oh, there's a lot of digging definitely involved with that. So let's get down to business. Tonight, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Rick and I are going to curate the ultimate number one hits of the 70s mixtape, and we're going to use that old cassette deck approach. Rick, as my special guest, will begin side A with his first song choice, and then I'll add a song that I feel best follows up that choice. We'll then flip-flop choosing songs until we've mapped out 10 songs for side A. We'll then give our mixtape a proverbial flip, and we'll map out side B, only this time I'll kick things off with Rick choosing second. Our overall goal for the episode is to craft the best number one hits of the 70s mixtape possible through only 20 songs. At the end of the show, you can take our conversation to the next level by visiting the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com to give our final mixtape a listen via the embedded playlist. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, gain early access to future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, chime in on upcoming topics, become a future guest, and so much more. And a few of the Patreon mixtapers chimed in with the songs they would use to kick things off tonight, and I want to give a quick shout out to a few of those. Brandon from Virginia chimed in with Manfred Mann's cover of Blinded by the Light, saying he knew every word of this when he was 5, which I think is amazing because I'm in my late 40s, and I still don't know exactly what he's saying in that song. Philip Bergman says, if you know me, Brian, you know my answer. December 1963, Oh What a Night by the Four Seasons. Chad Lamas is taking a completely different approach with his song choice, going with One Bad Apple by the Osmonds, as it was number one the week he was born. And Seeker liked that idea so much, he did the same, going with Brown Sugar by, and I quote, some band called the Rolling Stones, as this song was number one on the day he was born. Tom Hutchison chimed in with the disco version of the Star Wars theme and Cantina Band, just because he was on a mission to make this episode weird. And Sean Goff chimed in with Heart of Glass by Blondie, saying this would be a fun song to kick the mixtape off with, as you can go in several different directions of new wave, punk, or disco coming out of it. So once again, if you'd like to chime in for future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, come join the fellow mixtapers at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. Now, Rick, with those picks out in the atmosphere, I'm officially pressing the record button on our mixtape and passing the mic to you. What song are you kicking off the ultimate number one hits of the 70s playlist with?
All right. Well, I'm going to go with one of your Patreon's picks. And I think we talked about this a little bit. It's like, okay, are we going to go weird with this mixtape, or are we going to, stick more to what we're talking about? And I think that's more of the rock and roll. So it's Brown Sugar. It's the Rolling Stones. It is the ultimate rock and roll band, given one of its all-time classic hits. Had to start with Brown Sugar. And it's got Mick Taylor on guitar when he was in the band there too. So that's a little extra added bonus for me.
I'm not going to lie. I love the Mick Taylor era of the Rolling Stones. From 1971, Sticky Fingers. The song spent 2 weeks at number one. In 2010, Rolling Stone ranked this number 495 on its list of 500 greatest songs of all time, and number 5 on their list of 100 greatest guitar songs of all time. Now, in the same year as Sticky Fingers, Little Richard released a cover of this on his The King of Rock and Roll album.
Nice.
That was back in the 70s when artists would cover songs that were just hitting the charts. You don't see much of that anymore, but back in the 70s, this was something that actually happened several times in just the songs that I have in my bank alone.
Right.
And once again, I want to give a shout out to Patreon mixtaper Seeker, who also chimed in with this one.
Nice. And I bet you the Stones like that. I mean, Little Richard was such a big part of who they were, and they loved Little Richard so much. I bet you that was pretty cool to know that he was doing Brown Sugar.
Considering the influence he probably had on the Rolling Stones, I'm sure it's both a blessing, a hat tip, a compliment, all those things rolled into one great musical package, as only Little Richard could do.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to follow this up with a song that, well, it's going to check off both the number one hits of the 1970s playlist, as well as the I've Got a Fever and the Only Prescription is More Cowbell playlist. And I am going to go with Grand Funk's We're an American Band, the title track from their 1973 album of the same name. Once again, spent only 1 week at number one, but it also ranks number 99 on VH1's list of the 100 greatest hard rock songs. And this song has been covered by everyone from Poison to Rob Zombie to the Village People. And what I find most interesting about this song, it's one of the small batch of Grand Funk tunes that wasn't sung by Mark Farner, as Don Brewer sang the lead vocals on this one. So following up Brown Sugar, let's get that cowbell going with Grand Funk and We're an American Band.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's got one of the best intros too. That's a great rock and roll jam right there in the beginning of that song. I don't know why. I just saw video of it the other day. So that's interesting that you chose it, but I just realized, man, that intro is a great jam. That's a really great tune.
Well, we've got Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones and We're an American Band by Grand Funk. Where do we go from here?
Well, I told you I'm bringing the big rock and roll guns out. So if I'm going Rolling Stones, I've got to follow up with the Beatles, right? So I'm going John Lennon, Whatever Gets You Through the Night.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was Lennon's only number one single, which was interesting. And do you know the Elton John story behind this one?
Yep.
In the studio with Elton John, Elton says, hey, this is a number one hit. John's like, no way. He goes, okay, if it is a number one hit, you come play live with me. The thing goes number one, and Lennon comes and plays with them at Madison Square Garden.
And that version is really awesome too, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, whatever gets you through the night. That's a great tune.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was also one of John Lennon's last major concert appearances. But the lead single from 1974's Walls and Bridges, once again, only 1 week at number one. And the fact that this is Lennon's only number one single, like you mentioned, I think that's an astonishing fact. I think that's something that people overlook. And I bet you if you asked any average music fan which song was John Lennon's only number one hit, pretty safe to guess that 9 out of 10 people are going to get it wrong. Because even I would have guessed Imagine prior to whatever gets you through the night. And that's nothing against this song. I absolutely love this song. But along with Elton, I think we should also tip our hats to Bobby Keys and Ron Aprea, who totally nailed the sax parts on this track. And for me, at least, I can't picture this song without the saxophone.
Right. And that's interesting. You mentioned Bobby Keys. He played on Brown Sugar also.
Yeah, these session musicians really made the rounds, making it with, and I have some songs in my bank that also involve session musicians that we're probably going to talk about at some point here.
He was a great session player. He played on a lot of great tracks, especially with the Stones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But what I'm going to do now for track 4 is slow it down a little bit.
All right.
And I'm going to go with the third song in a row that only spent 1 week at number one. And I'm also going to go with an artist who, like John Lennon, it's his only number one song, at least in the U.S. And I'm going to go with Neil Young from 1972's Harvest, his only number one hit in the U.S., Heart of Gold. It also hit the number one spot in his home country of Canada, the Great White North as well. In 2021, Rolling Stone ranked it number 259 on their list of the 500 greatest songs of all time, featuring backup vocals from James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt. I mean, think about that. These are people that have their own roster of hits up and down the charts, and they're just backing up Neil Young on this song. This has always been a favorite of mine. Besides Colburn and Company playing this song at pretty much every gig we've ever done, it's been famously covered by the likes of Willie Nelson, whose cover version hit number 44 on the Hot Country Singles Chart in 1987. It's also been covered by Roxette, Betty LaVette, Tori Amos, Johnny Cash featuring the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Black Label Society. So to me, this one's an absolute classic. Neil Young, Heart of Gold.
Good pick and a good tempo too for what we're up to. So a good time for Heart of Gold in there.
All right. So what are we going to follow that up with for track 5?
I'm following up with another crazy number one. This is actually his first number one from David Bowie, and that is Fame, the song he did with John Lennon. So I'm running, my connection is running pretty solid here. I got Stones, Beatles, and David Bowie.
Stones, Beatles, Stones.
Yeah.
The second single from 1975's Young Americans spent 2 whole weeks at number one. And it also hit number one in Canada. Now, the song, because I was in high school at the time, had a resurgence as Fame 90 was released as part of the Pretty Woman soundtrack. That version hitting number 6 on the Billboard US Dance Club Songs chart.
There you go. Yeah, and I was reading about Bowie in this song. It was his least favorite track on the record. He hated it. He's like, no, this is my least favorite song. And, Carlos Alomar and Lennon played a small part. And the research I did, he played a small part, but he did come up with the lick there in the beginning. And I think he called it something other than Fame. I can't remember what he was saying. He was saying a word, and David picked up on it and said, no, let's go with Fame. And that's how they got that. Pretty cool track.
Oh, it's a great track. And I don't think you get to like David Bowie and Trent Reznor's I'm Afraid of Americans without what he did on Fame. I feel like that vibe is what kind of took you through into the 90s, where David Bowie was still seen as a prominent artist because that sound was around on this song originally.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, you've got this Stones, Beatles, Stones thing going. I'm going to connect to one of my earlier songs, as this person I just mentioned was singing backup vocals on Heart of Gold, but I'm going to bring her to the front of the stage for this one. And we're going to go with Linda Ronstadt's You're No Good from 1974's Heart Like a Wheel. Once again, though, we're back to spending only 1 week at number one. So a deep, deep pick here. Written by Clint Ballard Jr. and first performed in 1963 by Dee Dee Warwick. It was also a hit for the Swingin' Blue Jeans in 1964 before Linda made the song, at least in my humble opinion, her own. And yes, that includes Van Halen's cover at the beginning of 1979's Van Halen 2. I love that version, but Linda Ronstadt's is just on another level. And it's because of this cover song that the majority of her hits throughout the rest of the decade would be cover songs. Think Blue Bayou, Tumblin' Dice. It all started with You're No Good.
Wow, that's great. That's such a great tune. That's a great trivia too. Back to like all those weird people who did the song, and I never knew that. I knew it was a cover, but I didn't know it was that deep in lore. And she's so good and such a great rock and roll female force. That's a great tune.
All right, well, we are now up to track 7. So where are we going to go from here?
All right, so I'm gambling on this one. This has got to be longer than 1 week on the charts for this one. And I'm going to follow up Linda Ronstadt with my favorite female vocalist in rock and roll of all time, and that's Stevie Nicks. And the song is Dreams with Fleetwood Mac. And so tell me, did it stay on the charts more than 1 week?
It did not. 1 week at number one.
I would have put all in on that, man. I would have put it all in. And really, it did not. Because, Fleetwood Mac, if you look at the 70s, you would say that's one of the bands that own the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Eagles too were, making huge hits, but, Rumors was so big. So I'm really surprised that Dreams wasn't more than 1 week as a number one hit in the United States. Crazy.
Agreed. And my mom has told me over the years that my love of music comes from the Rumors album, because when she was pregnant with me, every single night she would put headphones on and listen to this album. So it's all a Stevie's fault. She hypnotized me in the womb, and I've been a sucker for music ever since. The song ranked number 9 on Rolling Stone's 2021 list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. I love my cover songs, and the Coors version, which was originally on the Legacy, a tribute to Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, actually had a dance remix by Oliver Lieber. And that became a top 10 hit for the Coors in Canada, the UK, Iceland, Hungary, and Scotland in the 90s.
That's awesome.
So between the hypnotic drum loop, and yes, that's a drum loop in the song, and Lindsey Buckingham's ability to turn 3 chords into various segments of this song while keeping that continuous drum beat loop really speaks to all the members of Fleetwood Mac's talent, because every section of Dreams feels different, but yet they're all the same.
Yeah.
And obviously in 2020, the song had a viral resurgence because of that TikTok moment when the guy went skating around listening to the song while drinking Ocean Spray cranberry juice. That made the song re-enter the charts and also hit the charts on Spotify and Apple Music some 40 plus years later. So
that's great.
Love the track.
Yeah. All-time classic.
Absolutely an all-time classic. And I'm going to follow it up with a song that, again, spent 1 week at number 1.
Gotta break this record somewhere in there.
And I'm going to go off of their 1974 album, Not Fragile, and we are going to go with Bachman Turner Overdrive's You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Written by Randy Bachman, the song was also a number 1 hit in Canada, Germany, Denmark, and South Africa, and became the band's only major hit in the UK, where it reached number 2 on the UK singles charts, which came to the surprise of Randy Bachman because he wrote this song as a joke and never intended it to be a single. It was when radio stations across the country started giving it airplay that Bachman actually decided to wave the white flag and release it as a single, because he initially refused.
That's awesome. Awesome. I'm going to throw some Randy Bachman stuff in here again, because I, do rock and roll documentaries. He's got a new documentary coming out called Taking Care of Business. And it's about his lost Gretsch guitar. Have you heard the story of that one?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, earlier in his career, he had this Gretsch guitar that was like his number one, and it was stolen. And he searched for years and years and years. And he thought he saw it on a Thompson Twins video. So he chased after them to try to find his guitar. That wasn't it. He bought every Gretsch possible, he claims, in the world to try to find that sound. Couldn't get it. And then during COVID, someone brought to his attention that, hey, I think I might have found it. I'm not going to spoil the story, but the documentary is called Taking Care of Business. I haven't seen it yet. It's coming out. I don't think it's streamed just yet, but it sounds like it's going to be a great conclusion to that story of what happened to this guy's Gretsch and all the years in between building up to it. So that's my rock and roll documentary recommendation for you.
Oh, I can't wait to watch that. I really hope it doesn't end in the fact that he just picks it up and goes, nope, not it. And then they roll the credits.
No spoilers here.
All right. Well, we are up to track 9. So what do we got for your last song on side A?
Last song on side A, we got to do something different. We got to go away a little bit here. And like I said, I'm staying in the rock and roll zone, but I'm going to pull back a little bit and go with Stevie Wonder's Superstition. And it's got some rock and roll roots to it because he wrote that song with Jeff Beck. And Jeff Beck was kind of slow getting to it, and they released Stevie's version first, and it's such a cool jam. And I think Stevie actually played all the instruments on that record too, which is incredible. And then what I like about it, the connection to Stevie, was the Stevie Ray Vaughan version.
Oh yeah,
that Stevie Ray Vaughan just took and blew into the stratosphere with his version. So Stevie Wonder's Superstition is such a great tune.
And then Beck also did the song with Beck Bogert and a piece.
Yes.
You had Widespread Panic with the Dirty Dozen Brass Band and George Michael. Like, everyone's covered this song because it's a freaking anthem from 1972's Talking Book. It spent 1 week at number 1.
We stay there.
In 2021, Rolling Stone ranked the song number 12 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. And the song won 2 Grammy Awards, one for Best Rhythm and Blues Song and one for Best R&B Vocal Performance Male. And finally, the song was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, a well-deserved induction there. One of the greatest friggin' funky-ass riffs ever.
You nailed it. Exactly.
And coming out of that, I think I'm going to stay with a little bit of that funkiness, but I'm going to inject a little bit of prog, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of experimentation, and another song that only spent 1 week at number 1. However, I think it's going to be our only instrumental of the night, and I am going to go with the Edgar Winter Group's Frankenstein from 1972's They Only Come Out at Night. It was also a number 1 hit in Canada. Rolling Stone lists it number 7 on their list of the 25 best rock instrumentals. It was originally not even intended to make the album and was only released as a B-side to Hangin' Around, but the single was quickly flipped by the label when radio stations around the US and Canada were getting hammered with requests for Frankenstein over Hangin' Around. To me, this song is lightning in a bottle. You have Winter playing the bulk of the instruments on the track, including the synth, the piano, the saxophone, and the percussion. You have Rick Derringer, who did Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, working production on this track, with some guy named Ronnie Montrose on guitar. You might have heard of him.
Nice.
Dan Hartman, the I Can Dream About You singer, on bass, and Chuck Ruff on drums. Believe it or not, I didn't discover this song until the 90s when it was one of the tracks on the Encino Man soundtrack, of all things, which I had picked up on vacation when we were down in North Carolina. I picked it up at a Radio Shack because at the time in the 90s, at least down in North Carolina, Radio Shack sold cassettes and CDs. I ended up grabbing the Offspring's Smash on cassette because they didn't have it on CD, and the Encino Man soundtrack on CD. So, total sidebar there. But Fish has covered this song live close to 100 times over the years. This song, to me, is just instrumental perfection. And I think it's a fun way to close out side A.
Great ending of side 1. Great job.
Well, that Mixtapers concludes side A of the ultimate number 1 hits of the 70s mixtape, which consists of the Rolling Stones' Brown Sugar, Grand Funk's We're an American Band, John Lennon, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, Neil Young's Heart of Gold, David Bowie's Fame, Linda Ronstadt's You're No Good, Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, Bachman Turner Overdrive's You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, Stevie Wonder's Superstition, and the Edgar Winter Group's Frankenstein. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. And now I get the honor of kicking off side B, and I think I know exactly how we're going to do this.
All right.
This side is going to start off with some drums, some iconic drums. And we're going to go with a song that spent 6 weeks at number
there
one.
It is.
So
there
we finally got a decent run for a number one hit. And we are going to go off of their 1979 debut, Get the Knack, the Knack's My Sharona. The song ranks number 75 on Billboard's Hot 100 all-time songs list and number 16 on the top Billboard Hot 100 rock songs. To further put into perspective the legacy of My Sharona, during the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller, the now late Quincy Jones, rest in peace, wanted the album to have a rock and roll inspired song in the vein of My Sharona. With that advice, Michael Jackson wrote Beat It.
Oh, that is so cool.
And there's also that little parody by Weird Al Yankovic called My Bologna. And I guess since I mentioned Beat It, you also should mention Eat It, because you got to include Weird Al's parody wherever you can, at least in my world, you have to. And finally, let's not forget the resurgence that My Sharona had in the 90s as a result of the Reality Bites soundtrack. So a hit in both the 70s and the 90s, and to me, a timeless classic to kick off side B.
Absolutely. And it's pretty crazy. There's 6 weeks on the charts. You know, you're going up against Dreams and Brown Sugar and Superstition, all these huge monster hits. But I think My Sharona, I think you mentioned this earlier, is 79.
It was in 79, yes.
So I think you start seeing a little bit more longevity of charts as we got into the 80s, I think you mentioned. So maybe that played a part? I don't know.
There's not a lot of songs that had lengthy runs during the 70s, which is a shame because every song we've talked about so far, you would think, including My Sharona, there's only been 3 that have had a longer than 1 week run, which is completely shocking to me.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I'm going to follow that up with another one that's kind of shocking. I don't know how many weeks it's been on the charts, and I thought when we were doing this, I'm like, all right, so I've got side 1. Now what do I need to do to side 2? So this is going to be my kickoff to side 2. But it goes back to the Rolling Stones, my favorite Rolling Stones album, Some Girls, and the song is Miss You.
Nice.
Yeah. What a great tune. Kind of took them in a different kind of direction. They had that New York City vibe going on for the Miss You song and the Some Girls record. It was a little bit different, had a little, dancey disco flair. Mick was hanging out in the discos a little bit there in New York, but such a great tune, timeless Stones tune.
Couldn't agree more. And depending on who you ask in the band, the song is or isn't a disco tune, because Mick Jagger and Ronnie Woods insisted it wasn't written that way, but Keith Richards said it was calculated to be a disco tune. So
Keith and Mick were not there, different of opinions. That's hard to believe.
I'm shocked. I'm flabbergasted by that notion.
Right. I don't think it's disco. Do you think it's disco? Would you call it disco?
I'd say there's a disco influence to the Rolling Stones sound.
Right.
I don't see Mick up there doing the Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta, arm in the air dance to this, but you definitely want to get up and kind of shake your groove thing to this song. There's definitely a dance vibe to it.
Oh yeah, there's a great groove in this one.
But it's still Stones. It's still a rock song at the end of the day.
Definitely.
And it's a rock song that spent 1 week at number 1 and also hit number 1 in Canada, as was a top 10 hit in Australia, the UK, Sweden, Ireland, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. In 2010, Rolling Stone magazine ranked Miss You as number 498 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. So coming out of that, we've talked disco. Do I rip the Band-Aid and throw in Disco Duck here just for the hell of it?
It was Rick Dees, wasn't it?
Rick Dees and his cast of idiots. I had the 45 as a kid.
Wow. How did I remember that? Yeah, we're from the same time period, and that thing was just like, what?
We certainly are. And I am not going to go with Disco Duck as much as I love that song. People that know me as a kid, I took that 45 everywhere. I thought it was friggin' brilliant. But I am going to go with something that is disco, but also I'm going to fully admit kind of rocks. And I'm going to go with the Bee Gees, Staying Alive from 1977 Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, lasting 4 weeks at number 1. So another quote unquote massive hit. In 2021, Rolling Stone ranked the song number 99 on its list of 500 greatest songs of all time. It made Time Magazine's list of all-time 100 songs and is included in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. In the 90s, again, back to my high school days, Trance covered the song as a dance version, and that version hit number 1 in Australia, Canada, Scotland, and the UK, as well as becoming a top 10 hit in countries all over the world. However, my favorite cover of Staying Alive is Ozzy Osbourne and Dweezil Zappa's rock version that you can find on Ozzy's Prince of Darkness box set. I told you the
Nice.
song rocks, and if Ozzy blessed it, it belongs in this list.
Nice. There you go. That's a good pick. So here comes another connection to my rock and roll people, but it's not as big as the Bee Gees. It's not as big as the Stones, but this guy was around them, and it's Billy Preston's Funky Nothing for Nothing.
Nice.
A 1974 great get down tune from Billy Preston on the keyboards there. And one of the cool things I really liked about this song was this was the first performance on Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? I would never have thought that. The first performance was Billy Preston. That's really cool.
Yeah, we're dropping trivia left and right on this episode, so you could use this for your Jeopardy studies, I guess. But from 1974's The Kids and Me, Nothing from Nothing spent 1 week at number 1. It also charted in Canada, where it hit number 5, and Australia, where it hit 60. Billy Preston was rightly inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of 2021, and he's one of the very few musicians to ever be given a credit on a Beatles recording, that being their 1969 single Get Back, as it was credited as the Beatles with Billy Preston as per the band's request. As far as I'm concerned, Nothing from Nothing is joy in musical form, period.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful tune. And that Get Back documentary, have you seen it, the Beatles Get Back documentary?
Yes.
It's so great when he comes into the room and they just light up. And then when he starts playing with them, it just creates this different magic within the four of those guys. That was really cool.
You used the perfect word. He created magic with them. He really did. And what I'm going to do is tap into some of that magic, that funky vibe that you brought. And I'm going to go with a song that came out in 1972 and spent a staggering 1 week at number 1. Written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong for Motown, this song was originally recorded by The Undisputed Truth. However, it was the Temptations that took Papa Was a Rolling Stone to the top of the charts. It was also a top 10 hit in the Netherlands, South Africa, and New Zealand, and was a top 20 hit in Canada, the UK, and Germany. Then, again, my cover versions, I'm sorry, in 1990, Was Not Was released a cover that charted in the US, Canada, Australia, the UK, and Austria, among several other countries. And over the last few years, we've gotten some killer versions of this song from both the Black Crowes on their 1972 EP and Slash featuring Demi Lovato, of all people, on his Orgy of the Damned album. That entire Slash Orgy of the Damned album is a cover song's delight, but
Yes.
He brought the rock to Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and Papa Was a Rolling Stone is a funk R&B flavored tune, but make no mistake, the Temptations rock this one as well.
Yeah. Very good choice there, especially coming off of the Billy Preston tune. So I'm going to double down on that and stay with the master, kind of the father of that funk R&B sound stuff. And that was Sly and the Family Stones. Thank You for Letting Me be myself again. I'm not going to try to say it in that weird way they spelt it out. Even his memoir was that. That was the title of it, all spelt out crazy. But that was just a get down tune. And Sly had so many of those great tunes from that time where he was in the zone there for a while. It just kept just one after another of those really good, funky rock, R&B, soul smashes.
Oh, his greatest hit CD is A Party. You just put that in and you've got the party set. And I'm not going to lie, I love the Mondegreen spelling of the song title. This was before Korn and Limp Bizkit made it a thing in the 90s. Sly and the Family Stone invented it in the 70s. It was a double A-side, including Everybody is a Star, that was released in December of 1969. So this was actually a song that was recorded and released in the 60s, but didn't hit that number one spot until February of 1970, where it stayed for a staggering 2 weeks at number one. 2 weeks this time.
Wow, that's a great trivia. In the 60s, but it hit in the 70s, so it snuck in there.
Yes, and it was the fourth number one hit of the entire decade, following B.J. Thomas's Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, the Jackson 5's I Want You Back, and Shocking Blues' Venus.
Don't know that one.
You probably know, if you remember, Bananarama's Venus in the 80s. Yeah. This was the original of that.
Okay.
Now, Sly and the Family Stone's Thank You was ranked number 410 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. And while it's not a cover per se, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation from the 1989 album of the same name includes a really cool sample from this song.
Yeah. He talked about someone who was sampled a lot. He was sampled a lot.
Why not? I mean, it's just screaming, sample me, really.
Exactly.
Well, to follow that up, I'm going to stay funky, but I'm going to bring us a little bit out of the R&B realm and back into rock and maybe even a little bit of folk, as this song was another double A-side single like Sly and the Family Stone, but it happened in 1971, and it was a double A-side with the single It's Too Late. And I'm going to go with Carole King's I Feel the Earth Move. Number one for 5 consecutive weeks, so another long-running song here. It also reached number 6 in both the UK and Australia, and together with It's Too Late, I Feel the Earth Move was number 213 on the RIAA's 365 Songs of the Century. Now, there is some controversy surrounding this song because It's Too Late technically received more airplay in comparison. But coming out of Sly and the Family Stone, I feel like it was too much of a pivot to go with It's Too Late. Right. But the vibe of I Feel the Earth Move, I think brings you out of that little run of R&B and funk in a way where you could go somewhere else with it. And I think people also have a blind spot on this song because in 1989, Martika released a cover of this song. And I think the entire country was still basking in the glow of Toy Soldiers because most people refer to Martika as a one-hit wonder. But her cover of I Feel the Earth Move hit number 25 on the Billboard US Hot 100 and was a top 10 hit in the UK, Australia, Ireland, and New Zealand.
Wow.
But even that's not my favorite cover because in 2013, Shinedown released a killer version on the Warner Sound Live Room EP that, if you haven't heard it, I highly suggest checking it out. Total gender flip on the song, but it works so friggin' well.
Very cool. That song was funky, no doubt about it. That piano piece there. And what I found interesting in that song is, that starts the album off, and then you have So Far Away and It's Too Late, and You've Got a Friend, these really different mellow songs. It's Carole King. You're like, wait a minute, what happened there in the beginning? Where'd that go? The Tapestry record.
Yeah, I don't think that's what people were looking for, which is why it didn't really hit on the charts as much as It's Too Late did, because It's Too Late, I think, follows into the songs you mentioned there. Obviously, you mentioned that one, but that's more of what people think of when they think of Carole King. But for me, the rock guy in me, it's I Feel the Earth Move.
Yeah, it's a good song. Good song. That's a good one. Good. So we're going to stick with a little rock here, and we've got to include a guy who wrote a lot of really cool 70s songs, and that's Steve Miller.
Nice.
And Rockin' Me. the great Rockin' Me classic that he wrote to kind of expand his sound. I read where he was, doing a lot of shows, doing a lot of festivals, and he was playing with Pink Floyd at the time. And he wanted to have a song that could just hit that festival audience and these big, large audiences that he was playing to. And he came up with Rockin' Me. And there's only 3 guys playing on that song. It's him and the bass player and the drums. That's it.
And considering how beloved the song is, I think you hit the nail on the head, because according to setlist.fm, it's one of the songs that Steve Miller has performed the most in his career over the decades, alongside of The Joker, his cover of Paul Peña's Jet Airliner, Abracadabra, and Fly Like an Eagle. As somebody who grew up with the Greatest Hits 1974 to 78 album in his collection,
yep,
I feel like this is a must-have on a 70s playlist, and I'm glad we found a spot for at least one Steve Miller song, because I had both this and The Joker sitting in my bank tonight waiting to go. This song spent 1 week on both the US and Canada charts at number 1, and also charted in the UK, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and South Africa. So one of the big ones from Steve Miller Band. I'm so glad we got that into the mix, because I think I would have felt some guilt if we didn't, because I can't tell you how many times we spun 74 to 78. To me, even though it's a greatest hits album, it's one of those ones that transcended the greatest hits album, kind of like the Eagles' greatest hits and the Doobie Brothers' greatest hits. Steve Miller Band 74 to 78 to me almost feels like a Steve Miller studio album.
Yeah, it's one of those iconic pieces of the 70s, like we were talking earlier about Rumors, of course, and that Miller's greatest hits. Everybody from that time's got a copy of that one.
Oh, gotcha.
And the cassette and the 8-track.
I was going to say, and I got the CD as well. So
and the CD.
I had to have that in the 90s when I was in my car, and I had to have the CDs with me.
Right.
All right. Well, we're at that point where we each have one song left. And I know we've talked about the Beatles tonight, but we only talked about the Beatles in a solo sense. So I felt it's only fitting as my last song tonight to at least put one Beatles song in the fold for our discussion, that being the title track from 1970's Let It Be, where it spent 2 weeks at number 1. This was the Beatles' final single released before Paul McCartney announced his departure from the band, and in 2004 the song was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, rightfully so. In 2010, Rolling Stone ranked it number 8 on its list of 101 greatest Beatles songs, where Mojo magazine, in a very similar list, ranked it 50, a lot lower. Rolling Stone also ranked Let It Be number 20 on its 500 greatest songs of all time list, and in the throwback to another song we talked about on this side, the late great Billy Preston, laying down that Hammond organ on this track, making it work. I mean, again, I can't picture Let It Be without that organ. It's Billy Preston, man. I love the Beatles. I take nothing away from it, but you pull that organ out of the track, and I think you lose a little bit of what made this song so magical and such an iconic part of Beatles history.
Big time, big time. And, let's go back to what a mixtape is and how you put them together. And we've been bouncing around and putting things together. So the end of the mixtape, just like the beginning of the mixtape, you've got to end on a grand finale, right? You've got to have that big moment at the end of a mixtape. So I'm going to propose something to you, Ryan, that I don't know if it's ever been proposed or done on this show before. I've listened to a bunch of them, and I've never heard it before.
All right, you have my attention.
I'm tapping out.
Wow.
I have no final song. Let It Be is the final song of this mixtape. You cannot beat Let It Be. I had a song in there, but I'm like, you can't really come with any song after Let It Be. Probably one of the greatest finale songs in rock and roll history. Paul, in a concert, Let It Be. Come on, you can't beat that. That's it. It's a complete tape.
Well, there you have it, folks. Side B of the ultimate number 1 hits of the 70s mixtape, with a first on my weekly mixtape as he's pressing that stop button on the 9th song. Side B kicked off with the Knack's My Sharona. Then we had the Rolling Stones' Miss You, Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive, Billy Preston's Nothing from Nothing, The Temptations, Papa Was a Rolling Stone. Sly and the Family Stones, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. Carole King's I Feel the Earth Move. Steve Miller Band's Rockin' Me. And the Beatles, Let It Be. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. Well, Rick, why don't you tell listeners a little bit about Rock Talk Studio and where they can find your show?
Awesome. Rock Talk Studio is a weekly show where I review, preview, and I think most importantly, recommend new rock and roll books and documentaries. So every week I pick a spotlight title and I break it down and kind of give you the insight to give you enough information to say, okay, this is where I want to spend my time and my money. So I'm going to buy this book or I'm going to check out this doc. It's one of my passions. I just watch a ton of rock and roll documentaries and read a bunch of books. And it's on any directory where you can hear your podcast. It's on YouTube. So it's all over the place. Again, once a week, I take a title and just give you my best on why I recommend you checking it out.
Well, Rick, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape.
Been great, Brian. Good fun. Thank you.
Remember, you can find My Weekly Mixtape on almost all the social media haunts at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And finally, if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, gain early access to future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, chime in on upcoming topics, become a future guest, and so much more. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.